All right, so in today's Whiteboard Wednesday, what I wanted to talk about is about org design. And, you know, as a fast-growing company, this is something we have to think about a lot because basically we need to consistently reevaluate whether or not the org that we have is actually solving the problem that we need to solve, right? And fundamentally, I think, like for me at least, a few of the things that I find are very helpful ways to think about org design is, first of all, the actual org lines. So it's like who reports into whom should follow the communication lines. So a really good example of this is, like, let's take product marketing, which, by the way, it's not something that we are changing, but I'm using it as an example. But product marketing can often either live in the marketing org or it can live in the product org, right? And the reason why it's one of those roles that is like highly unclear as to where it should live is because of what is the communication that you're trying to solve for. Are you trying to have the person be more focused on distribution, which is why it would live in marketing? Or are you trying to have the person be more focused on like getting the things correct that they need to actually be talking about? So what are the features? What is the intention of what problems those features solve? Then you would want it sort of inside of the product org, right? So depending on what you're solving for, the person will need to communicate more with either their marketing peers or their product peers, and therefore you would make the decision one way or another, right? In like D2C, a very common one that we see, at least with a bunch of the brands that we work with, is like, where does growth live, right? And so, like, especially for ecom growth. And so growth, we have seen, it can live in like one of three places. Either there's actually like a VP of growth, or there's a person who runs ecom. This is the most common for omni-channel brands, or it's under the CMO, right? Or like marketing, basically. And this is like a very interesting one because, again, depending on what is the problem to be solved or what is the thing that they're trying to accomplish, you'll see it end up in one of three places. And so generally the principles for how I think about this is, let's just say you're trying to figure out, hey, where do I put like my growth person? So like the person who is leading like my paid social, my email, my SMS campaigns, like where should I have them report? And you're an omni-channel brand. Like the first question to ask is, what is the communication line? So is that person going to need to talk to the ecom team more? Or are they generally going to have to talk to marketing overall more? Or is it worth it to actually for it to be its own org reporting into a VP of growth? So some of the reasons I have seen it go in different ways is, hey, actually I want the growth team to primarily help drive our e-commerce revenue. And so then they need to talk to all the other people running the e-com business and report into a VP of e-com who runs the full e-com P&L. And so they need to communicate there. That's very common. Another approach is, hey, I actually need them communicating with the rest of my marketing, like my brand marketing, my influencer marketing, my retail marketing and sales, right? And that's generally if your problem to be solved is more along the lines of, hey, I'm actually comfortable with the investment here driving revenue in places that are outside of the e-com business, right? So again, org follows communication. The next question that I would generally ask is like, why should we keep it the same? So a lot of people are afraid of org changes because of like, it causes whiplash in the organization. But I actually think that the opportunity cost is often understated. And so instead of asking, hey, why should we change the org? Like, let's just say today is reporting to the VP of Ecom. We're trying to decide whether it should report to the CMO. I think the better question is like, hey, why should we continue to have it? What is the problem that we'll continue to solve? And do we agree that that is the high priority problem? And then another bullet, which is somewhat related, is what's the fire that's okay? And so for example, let's just say you are making the decision, hey, I'm going to put my growth person to report to the CMO instead of ecom. It's like, maybe the fire that's okay is that, hey, we are no longer going to see as much revenue come from ecom alone, but we're going to see total revenue go up. And so then the fire that's okay is that the ecom side of the business like sees less revenue for some period of time while the overall business is growing. And that could be totally fine, right? And that will lead to other things, which is like, first of all, the ecom team will feel like, hey, you're removing part of my responsibility. I'm seeing less revenue. So they'll start to feel like a less important part of the business. And so then that's another fire you have to deal with when you think about making these org changes. But maybe that's the right decision for the business, right? Depending on the business that you're in. And so like a very common place where we'll see this is in food and bev, is like oftentimes you initially want to drive ecom growth because you want to get some established customer base, you want to show that you can actually produce your own sales. And then after a certain point in time, you want to actually focus on retail because the margin profile for a lot of food and bev tends to be better in retail. And then you actually have the growth team switch to an overall CMO who is driving revenue more holistically. And then you actually do want the e-commerce team to like be the engine that continues to produce, but is no longer the central focus of growth. And so actually that's okay. So anyways, just thought I would share some thoughts around org design and how it can apply to both SaaS and e-commerce business. See you in the next one.